Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. Welcome back into the show, Keith, here to talk offensive tackles as a position group on the roster.
Yeah, offensive tackles. I mean, this was a situation where, 13 months ago, this was probably the weakest position on Seattle's roster, and one where we were really concerned about where the team was going forward. And now it feels like a strength because, a year ago they drafted two guys, both of them worked out. And now they're like cornerstones of really good offense.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, last year we were shocked. So we go into the draft. We knew we were probably going to come out with a tackle. We didn't know if it was going to be the first pick, although that was the best opportunity, but there were only a certain amount of tackles available. Mm-hmm. Just so happens one of their favorites, Charles Cross, dropped to 9 overall. It was an easy pick at that point. You just run up to the podium, you select Charles Cross, you've got your left tackle locked down for the next 8 years at least, probably. And 6'5", 308, 34.5-inch arm, super long, super quick feet. That was the best attribute, I think, out of his profile, and which you loved because that almost guarantees success there on the left side, but you still got to be able to execute. How did you think that Charles Cross did as a tackle in his rookie season, and where do you think improvement can come from?
Well, I mean, he did well. Rookie tackles tend to, there's a lot of hype because they're drafted in the top 10, and then they tend to be disappointing. And then in year 2 and 3, everyone goes, "Oh wait, they are good." Where he didn't really do that. He came out and he looked good. He had they had a lot of success with him there, and he did a pretty good job. He did wear down as the season wore on. I think that had to do with the fact that, he's a rookie and he's playing every single snap, and it's a long season. It's a 17-game season. In college, you play 12, and it's a longer grind. They put in a lot more work and stuff between games as well. So it just comes down to, the conditioning mentally, physically, and that kind of stuff, just to make sure that he's ready for the long season. Does that, if he can keep his level of play up where it was, or actually should be better because it's year 2, but up near the top of that all season long, we're looking at a guy who is probably making the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, so last year he played almost 1,100 snaps, 693 pass snaps. Now, that was actually less than his final senior year because that's pretty much all they did in college. And then of those, I don't remember. I think 693 were pass block snaps, and then the rest were run block. Now, run blocking, to me, for an offensive tackle that's just not used to it, is going to wear you down.
It is.
At some point because of just the physicality. And I think that's what happened. I think he was good to go on his pass block stats, but overall, he also had one game which was just miserable as far as penalties were concerned. He ended up with 9 penalties overall, but I think in one game he had 4 or 5 false start penalties, ended up with 6 on the year, 7 sacks allowed, 4 quarterback hits, 48 total pressures. I thought that was a bit high. I think, 25, 30% of those came in the last little bit of the season. And what I would love to see is like those penalties kind of cut in half, maybe 4 or 5 penalties, and then try to cut those pressures down, another 20% or so. And I think he is capable of being a Pro Bowl level left tackle in this league, but there's a lot of them in the league right now. So even if he's just league average, top 15, top 12, I think that's plenty good enough for Seattle and allows him to kind of remain with the team for a long time.
Isn't he already that, though?
Wow, that's a great question, actually. No, I don't think so. I think he's probably top 20. Um, I think he started the season really promising, absolutely, for sure. As the season went on, I think you could really kind of put a number of guys in front of him, I think. But yeah, I mean, he's no, potential wise, yeah, absolutely. After this year, I think he could be top 10. But it's just, he needs to take a step up, I think. Now, is he fine if he played at the same level? Are we going to be successful? I think so. I think that there's enough around him. The team's very at the skilled position groups at wide receiver and at running back and tight end. We've got plenty of weapons. So he just needs to kind of do the job enough to give Geno a chance to get the ball out, and that's it. Am I going to be satisfied with that? No. I mean, he's the first round pick at 9 overall. I'd love for him to kind of come up a little bit, but I mean, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think you're selling him short a little bit. Yeah, he had one game where he had a bunch of penalties, but on the other 16 games in the year, he had
48 pressures. That's quite a bit on 693 pass snaps.
That's 3 a game. It's less than 3 a game. 51 would be 3 a game. Right? That's pressures, not sacks. And
I mean, we'll talk about Abe Lucas in a second. I know he's on the other side, but Abe Lucas, he played just as many pass snaps, a little less. He had one game less. 28 total pressures.
Yeah. I'll give you that, but Abe Lucas also had a lot more help. He had a lot more tight end support on that side. Charles Cross, despite being a rookie, was literally put on an island the entire season.
That is true. I will give you that. He was left alone. In fact, we commented on that several times throughout the season. It was remarkable, really, to expect a rookie to come in and start right away and then not really have any issues. I mean, we really didn't have to call his name out other than that one game, that penalty game. Didn't have to call him out for really gross play because, now he had some quarterback sacks that he allowed and stuff, but some of that's on Geno as well. And you're right. I mean, they left him alone. They didn't have to put a tight end over on his side. They did occasionally, but most of the time he was just by himself and he handled himself very well. I agree.
Yeah. And when they did put a tight end over there, almost every time, that tight end went straight into a route. There was no combo block. There was no rub trying to help Cross out. It was just, that was the alignment. But it was they're still leaving Cross against some of the best pass rushers in the NFL, one-on-one. And I think he did well. And you're right. He did wear down at the end. A lot of those pressures came over the last 5 weeks. And
do you think that's a physically wearing down or mentally wearing down?
I think I think the answer to your question is yes. I think it's both. It's a long season. And when you're used to, a significantly shorter season, right? That's more than a third fewer games. It's a long season, and eventually, it starts to wear on you. Plus, he goes from, playing in college where you get snaps off and you get weeks off against awful teams where you can, go through the motions and still dominate. You can't do that in the NFL. The worst teams have elite athletes at defensive end. And so I think it's just a matter of, he was physically tired and mentally he was just, there wasn't a lot left in the tank. And this is a really common thing for a lot of rookies, not just offensive tackles and whatever, but every year. The length of the season is an issue for a lot of rookie players.
So what do you expect this year from him?
I expect him to take another step forward. And as a guy that was already really good, if he had that one bad turnover game, and I'd like to see that not happen again. And with that, if he's 4 or 5 penalties on the year, that's fantastic. If he can get his pressures down, so he's given up, less than 2 a game, so around 25 to 30, so it's less than 2 a game total. We're talking about a Pro Bowl level player, someone who's top 10, top 12 in the NFL. And if he can do that, the team's set. And I don't think that it's out of the question for him to get there, and not just get there, but get there this year.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because I think the overall expectation for the offense this year is amazing. I mean, it's really,
really
high, right? And so being part of that group for him, to me, I think would be enough motivation to come in ready to go and just have his best season ever. We'll find out. Let's talk about Abe Lucas. So we drafted this kid at 72 overall in the third round. He was there. We took the best player approach available in the draft, and just so happened to need that right tackle as well. And he came to us. We didn't really know what to expect, Keith. We didn't even know if he would beat out Curhan out of training camp. And then the rest, we know at this point, he turned out amazing. In fact, at times was better than Charles Cross. Now, he was at a different position, right tackle, different responsibilities. You mentioned some help on his outside edge with the tight ends, but nonetheless, man, you got to be impressed with the season he had.
Oh yeah, and everything you were saying about how in college Cross had all those pass block snaps, but not a lot of run block. Take that and make it worse, or more extreme. I guess is probably the right word for Lucas coming out of that Mike Leach system in Washington State, where they didn't run the ball ever. It was nothing but throwing. And so yeah, we didn't know what to expect from him. What we thought was that he was going to have to, kind of develop as a run blocker and get better. And that's why we thought Curhan might start at the beginning of the year, was just to give the team that ability to run the football. But he didn't need the development time.
Yeah, but 10 pancakes later.
Yeah, 10 pancakes in the first 3 weeks later. And everyone's like, yeah, we were concerned about nothing. Because
that was the rub on him. If you go back and look at the scouting reports and stuff, it was like, he's going to be no problem in pass pro, but he might need a little extra help on the edge once in a while. But in run blocking, he's going to need some time. He's going to need some development. There's questions about him getting to the second level, blah, 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 blah. And those things were erased by the time we got out of training camp.
Yeah. And this is a case of, just because you don't see it on film doesn't mean he can't do it, because it's not that he couldn't run block. It's that he was never asked to, and that had nothing to do with him. Yeah. That had everything to do with the coaching staff and what they wanted to do. And they didn't want to run the ball. The bigger question,
super athletic guy though.
Oh yeah. The bigger questions for me with him in the draft was, would he make the transition over to left tackle? Because he has all the attributes of a franchise left tackle, with his, length and his mobility and just his incredibly quick feet for a guy his size, and all those things. He looks like a left tackle, but he played exclusively on the right side in college. And so that was, kind of the thought. Eventually, if you're going to draft him, you're going to want him to play on the left. He's too good not to. Unless you're Seattle and you already drafted Charles Cross at 9 overall. And so now he can slide in where he's comfortable at right tackle, and you can leave him there. And you got 2 franchise guys, one on each side. And for most of the year, he was the better player. In fact, there were a lot of rookie tackles taken last year. For most of the season, Abe Lucas was the best rookie offensive tackle in the NFL. And then he really wore down at the end of the year.
Yeah. I think he only had 1 or 2 sacks going into like half the season. Ended up with 9 sacks allowed, 8 quarterback hits, 28 total pressures.
A lot of that came down the stretch.
What seems ludicrous now is that there were a lot of draft pundits, and we may have even had a discussion about it, where Abe Lucas might slide in to the right guard because he's just not ready to be on the outside or whatever. That's funny to me at this point after watching him for a full season. Okay. You have a guy who's got quick feet like that. You're not putting him in at the guard. It's not a matter of, you put him at the guard and you actually accentuate what you thought might be a weakness, which is his, driving forward power. Like that's what you're worried about. So why would you put him at a position where that is a, bigger component and his quick feet are a smaller component? There was a minute there in the pre-draft process, Keith, where they took a 30-man visit from Jones, the big, huge mammoth left tackle or right tackle, excuse me, from Ohio State. 6'9", 280 pounds or whatever, or 380 pounds.
Yeah.
And so we had talked briefly about Abe Lucas having to move inside, because if they draft that guy, what are you going to do? Anyway, let's talk about Abe Lucas and what he can do this year to kind of improve or refine his game.
Well, I mean, for him, there were some things like he was really good in terms of it run blocking and that kind of stuff. There was a little bit of recognition concerns in terms of who was coming and who wasn't at times, but he was quick enough to kind of make some adjustments and whatever. Everything that we said about Charles Cross and wearing down in the season was much more extreme on Lucas's side, because he was the better player for the first half of the season. But he was definitely the weaker of the two down the stretch, as he just wore down. And part of that was, I know he got banged up a little bit. He missed a game. But overall, like he started making some mistakes, mental mistakes, started leaning on guys rather than, keeping his position and that kind of stuff. And it just looked like fatigue. He looked like he was tired in games at the beginning of games. He was moving in a way like someone who just looked exhausted. And so for him, it's really a question of, getting his strength, conditioning, all that kind of stuff up to a pro level, so you can maintain your level of play for a 17-game season. And
do you think that was the instruction from Andy Dickerson in the offseason exit interview?
Yes, for both of the guys, was to go and take what you do and just ramp it up, and get to a point where, all the little things that you do are no longer quite as taxing because you've improved your conditioning to that level. And that's not to say that either of them were like out of shape or anything like that. I'm not trying to imply that. I keep saying it. The NFL season is a really long season, especially for offensive linemen, where you are, grinding up against some of the strongest people on earth.
Well, and let's be honest. Let's be honest. When you're in college football, especially in those offenses, your offense might be on the field like 5 plays for the entire drive. And you might be into a drive 13, 14, 15 plays in the NFL, and multiply that times 7 or 8 drives a game that might be at that level. And it's hard. I mean, it really is hard.
It really is different. And you're playing against it's higher quality competition on every rep,
week in, week out.
Yep. And so it just is what it is. Like I said, a lot of people, you see wide receivers do this, where they start out slow, because most wide receivers start out slow. Then they start having a really good middle of the season, and then they wear down at the end, where they just don't have the same impact the last like 4 weeks. It's common across all positions. For rookies, the season's just really long.
It's common beyond being a rookie too. Okay. So, and the reason, I guess I'll just tell this to everybody, the reason we're kind of being so picky with these guys and refinement wise is because our expectations are pretty high this year. I mean, this is a Super Bowl level offense potentially for the Seahawks this year, depending, it all rides on Geno Smith, and we kind of know that, but you refine these type of little things. This is what makes the difference, especially against teams like San Francisco and the defensive line with the Rams and some of the other major defensive lines that we're going to see across the NFL this year in the schedule. These guys, if they step it up just a little bit, and sometimes it's only just 5%, that little 5% difference could make all the difference in the world. All right, let's talk about some backups, because these guys are locked in at starters. One of the locked in positions we have on this team: Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas. Let's talk about Jake Curhan. Here's a player that we like.
I like.
Yeah,
big, powerful guy. Excellent run blocker. Just gets in and mauls people. We saw that his rookie year, the year prior, when he wasn't a starter at the beginning of the year, kind of worked his way into the rotation, eventually supplanted and got himself to that starting role. And he did so not by being necessarily a good pass blocker, because he wasn't, but by just being able to take giant defensive tackles, defensive ends, and drive them backwards. Which is why we both thought he was going to probably start last year at the beginning, because why start two rookies? You got to have a little bit of stability, right? No, we were wrong. I actually think there's a chance he moves into guard because he's not the great pass blocker, but all of that power in at guard can matter. Now he's got a lot of competition there because they drafted a guard and they've got other guys, and Damian Lewis is there. So maybe he doesn't. Maybe he stays as the backup right tackle, but he's a guy with a lot of potential as a run blocker and someone who needs to reps and continue to improve as a pass blocker.
Yeah, he's 6'6", 330. I mean, Abe Lucas is 6'5", 315. Charles Cross, same, right? Charles Cross even a little lighter. So this guy's got, some girth to him. And we saw him the year prior. You mentioned it. Guy came in, had some reps, and was effective. I do like him at guard. The team seems to not, for whatever reason. I mean, I think he would take some reps there, but I think they prefer him a right tackle. He's got certain attributes that I think that they like there. But well, you're right. It's beginning to get crowded now at that spot.
All across the line. The line's getting better and getting deeper. And he's part of it. Now they did work him out at guard a lot in the training camp and in preseason, which I thought was really interesting. But then, when it came to actual games during the year, he got like part of one game there because of some injuries at right guard. And the first drive was bad. I mean, it was just straight up bad. He was getting beat on every play. And it was like, oh, this, what's going on here? Because this was a guy that was so much better the year before. But then after that first drive, maybe the first couple drives, he settled in and that running game got going and he was mauling, defensive tackles, and having him and Lucas next to each other was fun because, Ken Walker had all the space he wanted on that right side on every down. And that is what you want. And so I think the fact that they tried him out there in training camp, and then he did get some reps there. He's down on the depth chart a little bit at right guard because I don't think he gets a lot of practice time during the year at that. But it's part of his versatility that he can play both those positions. And as a backup offensive lineman, if you want to be active, you better be versatile.
And he had 34 snaps last year, so one sack allowed, 11 snaps, one quarterback hit, 2 pressures. Not horrible, but admirable to come in and a little bit. Stone Forsythe, Keith, 6'9", 312 pounds. He had actually 122 snaps last year. 66 pass, 1 penalty, 7 total, no sacks. Pretty decent job coming in.
Yeah, I mean, talk about length, 6'9". He's like monster. When they drafted him, he was like a 6th round pick. We were like, okay, he's a developmental prospect that could be a franchise left tackle because he's got that length that you just can't coach, and he's got some quick feet for a guy that size. What he didn't have was the functional strength to hold up at the point of attack, on every down, and he needed to work on that. But then, he never got a chance to show that he could do it. They went and drafted Charles Cross, and that was that. And he becomes the swing tackle now because he can play on both sides, and he did last year. He played on both sides of the line. When Lucas was out, it was Forsythe, not Curran, who got the start, which I thought was interesting. My guess, it was just a matter of there had been some sort of competition in practice at some point. The coaches felt better with Forsythe there as pass blocker. And I don't blame him because, Curran's got some weakness as a pass blocker. And so, he is a guy that I wouldn't be surprised when his rookie contract is up. He gets an opportunity. He goes to a team that's kind of in flux, and they're going to give him, one of those contracts where it's like, hey, come in, win a job. And I would be surprised if he does.
You're exactly right in the fact that when he came in, he needed some time in a program. He fell in the draft for a reason, ended up going in the 6th round to Seattle, but he was projected by some to go earlier than that, even as high as the 3rd round.
Yeah.
Now that he's been in the program for a couple of years, this would be the season that you would think that he would come up and really press for some time. It just doesn't work that way in offensive lines in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to wait for a guy to get nicked up or whatever in a game, and then you'll have an opportunity. you're right about the rookie contract thing and maybe having another opportunity off the team. You know, you keep a guy like this on a roster for a while, but if a guy really deserves an opportunity to start, he's going to approach free agency in a certain way, and may not come back to the team because he would like that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think he's going to go look for an opportunity where he can get playing time and get on the field. Um, and honestly, like I said, I think he'll, even if it's a spot where he comes in as a competition, it's like, hey, we got these two guys that are both, um, unproven, but has talent. I think he goes in and wins a job.
Yeah, similar to like what Noah, not Noah Fant, but George Fant did several years ago when he went to the Jets.
Yeah, went in and won a job, and then later lost the job. But yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's interesting because he's just a guy with a lot of talent and has shown improvement. Like I said, there was a reason he dropped into the 6th round, but he didn't really play much as a rookie. But last year, a lot of the things, the concerns that we had, during the draft process with him didn't show up when he got on the field. He's improved that functional strength. He's improved his run blocking. He's not a guy who wins with length and length alone, right? He's now got he's more technically sound. And so, I mean, as far as swing tackles go, a guy that can come in off the bench and play either side in case of an injury, like, you could do far worse, because this is a guy with starting, caliber talent, but he's coming off the bench for you, which is a really great thing to have.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about a couple other guys. Greg Island, been with the team now. This will be his second year. 6'8", 335, Mississippi State, 2021 draft, went undrafted.
Yep.
He's a guy that with huge size, just size, has that mauler ability to start, at tackle, possibly even move inside to guard.
It's hard to do. It's hard to do guard at 6'8".
But less than athletic attributes as far as mirroring and being outside. And so he's strictly, to me, a right tackle.
Yep.
And he's got a couple of guys in front of him. So what do you do with a guy like Greg Island?
You do what they've done the last couple of years, and that's stash him in the practice squad and hope no one notices. Because he's a mauler. So he can run block, but he's 6'8". He's also got the length. Now he's not quick. That's the thing with him. He's got heavy feet. He's not quick. So as a pass blocker, he's going to have issues. But when you've got that length at 6'8", it's still harder. It's hard for guys to get around the edge on you, because you only need a couple steps and you've cut them off because you're so long. And so I think he's a guy that is going to struggle to make a roster in Seattle, because they're not going to keep 5 tackles on the active roster. But at the same time, if he comes in, plays well in camp, shows well, does okay, and in the preseason games, he might get picked up by another team, looking at a team that needs a backup right tackle, that basically needs him to be their version of Jake Curran. And I could see that. It's also possible that he comes in, shows additional versatility because of that length, that he can play on the left, and maybe Jake Curran is the guy, the odd man out. It's possible. I don't think it's likely, but it's possible.
Jalen McKenzie, I believe son of Reggie McKenzie. Everyone kind of remembers Reggie McKenzie if you're a longtime Seahawk fan. 6'5", 320 pounds, played guard at USC, played in 36 games, had over 2,000 snaps, college snaps. Athletic guy with an ideal frame. What do you know about Jalen McKenzie, if anything? I mean, he's a back of the roster guy, obviously, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on him, but they like him enough to keep him around for one practice squad season and possibly the next one here.
Well, I mean, I think he's got the body of a tackle, but no experience there. He played guard, and I think so that they're basically looking at him as a project. He's got some athletic traits that you like, and he's got the size and frame of a tackle, which you like. Can you teach him how to play the game at a high enough level at tackle when all he knows is guard? Also, if you look at where he was coming out of UCLA, like Chip Kelly,
USC.
USC. You've got you know, you've got an offense which is geared in a certain way, and you have completely different reads and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of learning that needs to happen. Um, I have no idea where he's at in that development process. But the idea that he would come in and have a shot to compete for a roster spot, I could see, especially if he can show that he can play tackle and guard. Because if that's the case, I mean, there's a lot of value in your offensive line backups that are versatile, because you can only keep 46 guys active on game day. And so um if you have offensive linemen that can play all the positions, or like for him, like if he can play 4 positions, that's more valuable
than Greg Island, who only plays 1.
Yeah, or a Jake Curran who plays 2.
Right.
And so you end up with guys like that are active, even if they're not as good as a Greg Island or a Jake Curran. He's more valuable to them on game day because you only have to keep 2 or 3 backup offensive linemen active rather than 9 total. With four active backups. And so when you can do that, there's a lot of value there for teams. And for him, it's just a matter of how much has he learned? How much has been there on the practice squad for a year? How much has he learned? How ready is he?
Okay, so we're done with the tackle conversation. Previous show, we had the guard and center conversation, Keith. This is your favorite time of the year, talking about offensive tackles and guards and centers.
Yeah.
Put it all together for me. What do we have in this group this season, potentially, that makes the Seahawks better in 2023 than 2022?
I think what's better is, I think both tackles should be better. I mean, it's just natural development of players, and they were both good last year, but I think they'll be better. I think athletically at center, they're going to be better, just because Blythe that's not who he was. Hopefully they don't lose anything in terms of the line calls and that kind of stuff. I think Bradford at right guard gives them an opportunity to be better, because Gabe Jackson his play just fell off a cliff last year. He went from being, one of the league's top guards to, honestly, they played him way more snaps than he deserved. And I don't know if it was because of injury or what, but he, like I said, his play just fell off a cliff.
Nobody's picked him up so far this year.
Yeah. I mean, he's still out there, because if you watch any of the tape from last year, why would you want to sign him? Even though he was the best offensive lineman on the team the year before.
And he's still relatively young. I think 32 years old. It's not horribly old for an offensive guard prospect. And then you mentioned Oluwatimi at center, potentially with competition with Evan Brown. I expect Oluwatimi to come out and win that job, just based on his character and his intelligence. And he's no slouch in actually performing on the field as well. And if you take a look at Evan Brown, overall, he played 70 snaps at center last year for Detroit. Most of his snaps, 700, I think, were at right guard. He can play center. He played center before. I think the team values him and projects him at center based on his physical attributes and his mental game.
Athletically, he is a center. He was playing at guard last year because that's where they needed him, because they had some injuries. But it's, he's basically like what would have happened if you'd taken Austin Blythe and moved him over to right guard because, Gabe Jackson was bad. It wouldn't have gone well. It's not who he is. But they didn't have
Evan Brown's a little bigger.
He is. But you know what I'm saying? It's like you take a center who's got attributes of a center and you try and play him at guard just because it's also interior line. It doesn't always go well. And he's a guy that should be at center. And when they played him at guard, it looked bad.
But he did enough to warrant a contract with Seattle in the offseason with an expectation that he'd be competing for a starting spot.
Yeah. And he came in when he was signed as the starting center. There's no one else on the roster. And now he's got Oluwatimi to battle with, which I think will be a fun competition. I wouldn't be surprised to see him win it initially. Oluwatimi has a lot going for him. He's also a 5th round pick for a reason. There's a reason why he dropped that far in the draft. And so there's some things that he has to overcome before he's ready to play. And if Evan Brown's already got that spot, like it wouldn't surprise me at all. It's Bradford at right guard that I see coming in and taking the job on day one. Um, I like Phil Haynes. He's done a good job when he's been healthy, but he hasn't been healthy as much as teams would like or Seahawks would like. But he played pretty well last year when he got to play in small doses. But when he got in there for longer, like the more reps he got, the less effective he was. And that's not something that you tend to want out of your starters. And so they're going to give him a shot to win that battle. But I think Bradford has the inside edge. I really do.
Do you think that Phil Haynes is on the bubble this year because of especially if Oluwatimi takes that center spot and Evan Brown can play 3 spots, and then Bradford wins the starting right guard spot? What happens to Phil Haynes?
I think based on his contract, he's probably on the bubble because they'd love to have that. He signed, I think he signed for like 2.2, and they'd love to have that cap space back. And maybe it's a situation where they go, hey, take a pay cut or we're going to cut you because we need the cap space and you didn't win the job. And if he says yes, then he sticks around. And if he says no, then they release him and he goes and finds another job. My problem with that wouldn't be, it isn't, Evan Brown then becomes your only backup for your interior positions.
Unless you look at Curhan in that way.
At right guard. I mean, Phil Haynes is a guy who last year did well as a backup. Right guard mostly. He played a little on the left side. He can move around. He can do both those jobs, and he does it pretty well, especially in coming off the bench when he's needed. And I think there's value there in the lack. It's like the one spot where there isn't a lot of depth. I think they're too deep at center. I mean, they've got Joey Hunt back again at center, but I'm not sure why. But they've got depth, especially at tackle. They've got great depth at tackle. They're too deep at center. They've got 3 guards. So if one of them gets hurt, now you got 2 guards and you don't have any backups. So it's like the one spot. I could see them also letting Phil Haynes go and finding someone who's on the waiver wire, someone who's a cap casualty elsewhere.
Or practice squad level guy that can jump back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, finding guys that can do that. And Curran is a guy that, maybe he becomes the backup right guard. And if Lewis that gets hurt, then you swap Bradford over and you bring Curran in at the right side and you do something like that. But it comes down to which is more important to you. Is it having that quality backup there, or that $2 million in cap space that even if you don't need it this year, it rolls over into next year and you're going to need it, right? And so it becomes an
and they may swap a guy like Phil Haynes for a defensive tackle at the end of training camp. You just stuff happens. You just never know. Cool. By all accounts, I think we're improving. We've got the 2 tackles that are going to have improvement. I think we've upgraded potentially the center spot. Evan Brown comes over. I'm not exactly sure. After looking at him, I don't know exactly what to expect. Whether he was just kind of a misfit at that right guard spot for the Lions last year, and he's just going to be a better center, and he's literally almost got that thing locked up. There's something about Oluwatimi, though, that gives me confidence that this guy's going to come in and
Seahawks want Oluwatimi to win that job. They want Bradford to win the other job. They want those 2 rookies to come in, stake their claim to the job, and not look back. And they're going to be given every opportunity to. And so it's
really. We said the same thing about the tackles last year. To me, there's a lot to read into that. When you get a guy like Pete Carroll advocating for that, telling Oluwatimi to come in ready to go because you're going to be in the competition to start, that tells me that they view him in a certain way.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And like I said, they want the rookies to win the job. They're younger, they're cheaper, they're more athletic. They're they have invested in the offensive line for the first time in a while, and they want that to pay off. And so if those two kids come in and look good, it's their job. And this is gonna be a young offensive line. You got 2 rookies, 2 second-year guys, and a fourth-year guy as your starting 5. That's a young group, right? Especially when your
Pretty
backups
exciting. It's pretty exciting.
when your backups are all young too. So this is a group that depending on whatever happens with Damian Lewis, if the 2 rookies win their jobs coming out of camp, you got Damian Lewis's contracts up at the end of the year. Do they
extend
replace
him
him?
or extend him before it even gets started.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. Or they could look to upgrade that spot with yet another rookie next year. And then either way, you've got a really good offensive line that is young, hungry, cheap, all those things, and improving.
With a lot of leadership qualities.
Yeah.
Yep.
High character guys. There's no Affetti in this group. There's no DJ Fluker in this group. The guys that are
I did like DJ Fluker though. Come on.
I liked him at I liked him at times. There were times when that attitude really paid off, and other times when he
didn't want to do the work.
Yeah.
He changed himself this last offseason. I don't know if you saw that, but he was workout warrior and came in just looking svelte. Now he's gone to some pro days as workouts and so forth. I don't know if he actually landed with the team on a 90-man roster yet or not, but he's a guy that's still out there too. He'd be interesting. I mean, he's a totally different looking player now. Lost all his bad weight. He looks actually pretty amazing.
If he is in that good a shape, man, like if you're a team and you need a guard, like why wouldn't you give him a shot?
Especially in a heavy run blocking team.
Yeah.
Like Cleveland or something. Anyway, let's get out of here. Great conversation. I love the offensive line conversations in the last 2 shows. I think it's going to be one of the most improved. It was already improved last year. I think it's going to be again one of the most improved position groups that we'll talk about this offseason. And just I'm just looking forward to this offense. I mean, when you put the offensive line that we just talked about together with the improvement that we saw at the skill positions, and then Gino coming back for year 2 in his run, it's just something. I mean, it's going to be something.
I hope so. The Seattle fan in me that has become cynical because of all of the all the bad Mariner seasons and what happened with the Sonics and the the 90s Seahawks and all of that. I don't believe until it happens. You know what I mean? I can't. I've been burned so many times, and I'm so scared. What happens if there's a bunch of injuries, or what happens if Gino goes back to being old Gino? And I know that none of those things are likely, but I just can't. I can't get super excited simply because when my expectations get too high, I get burned.
I've gone through those
entirely me.
I've gone through those seasons as well. And I've gotten to the point in my life where I don't care anymore. I love the team. I love the Seahawks. I want them to win. I do care about all those things, but I don't care enough to get in my own way, because I went through this last part with Pete Carroll, and I really enjoy Pete Carroll. I love Pete Carroll. He's my favorite Seahawks coach of all time. When you went through the 2012, the 2011, the 2012, the 2013, 14, 15 seasons, you recognize quality. You recognize when a team is extra, and I'm getting this feeling again about this team, especially on the offensive side. I think we need to see, we're going to have a whole series now on position groups on the defensive side. We'll see how we feel after those shows. But on the offensive side, Keith,
yeah,
I'm really excited about this team offensively, and I like defense a little more than offense. But as offenses go, this thing has the potential to be one of the best offenses in Seahawks history.
The Seahawks are loaded with weapons: wide receiver, running back, tight end. They've got a good young offensive line,
and a veteran quarterback.
Who looked really good last year. even though we had no expectations for him. We expected him to be bad. He came in and was great. If he can duplicate that performance this year with upgraded weapons and a better line,
that lasts until deep into the season. Yeah.
Like where is the fail point? Where's the thing that's going to cause this offense to struggle? I'm really having a hard time finding it. I like what Schneider has done in the draft the last few years on offense and getting this team ready for this offense should put up, 32 points a game. It really should.
Yeah. No, this is, we're in year quote unquote 2 of a 3-year rebuild. We've said that many times. The offense is ahead of the defense. The offense is in year 3 essentially because they're ready to go. Yep. It's the defense. The defense is going to dictate what happens to this team overall. The offense, they're going to score as many points as they can score, as long as the defense provides them with a little extra opportunity. This thing could be very special, and we'll just have to see how it goes. All right.
The defense has to be able to get off the field and not do what happened last year and the year before, where there was those really long 17 play drives.
3 and out. You either get 3 and outs or you get some turnovers.
Yep. Not on every possession, but they need a few, right? They need a couple of them every game just to get the offense more opportunities.
All right. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We're all over the place, whether it's Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple, etc. And then on YouTube, we've got our own YouTube channel. It's growing like crazy. We'd love to have you come on and subscribe to that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and get it in your feed every time we release a show. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.